Hi, my dear Astro family. Today we are going to be looking at the upcoming lunation taking place on the 3rd of January. This lunation is in the sign of Cancer on 13 degree. And the moon is in opposition to sun, but we have got this massive stellium happening here, right? We can see that the sun is sandwiched between Venus and Mars. So basically the sun is sitting on the midpoint of Venus and Mars. Mars is still out of bound, so that's going to be giving an extra boost to this new full moon. It makes it slightly bit more volatile, actually. And on top of that, this full moon is an exact square to an asteroid called Cassandra in the sign of Aries, which is sitting on 13 degree. And also it is in an exact square to an asteroid called Proserpina in the sign of Libra. So basically, we have got a grand cross configuration. Now, I did make a couple of videos about this Capricorn stellium before. So you might want to be listening to those because, of course, this stellium is pretty big. So we can see Juno, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, and even Vesta being here as well. So I wanted to give you as much insight about that previously as possible. But of course, please do the usual stuff. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video with others, or push the notification bell so that you don't miss my valuable videos. And also, I would like to announce a couple of things for you. My second house booklet is released, and the 12th house booklet is going to be released also in a few days' time. So, if you want to learn a little bit more about your second house and what placements mean for you, same with the 12th house as well, then you might want to go for it. The second house booklet actually ended up being 180 pages, while the second house, 12th house booklet is about 200 pages. So these are really deep dives into the realm of those two houses. And in a few weeks' time, the fourth house booklet is going to be ready as well. And that is about 270 pages. And I'm going to talk about family dynamics. All these are available on my website, AstroViktor.com. And I'm going to have some couple of very interesting webinars coming up as well this month. One of them is going to be the eighth house in medical astrology. So we are going to be looking at how the eighth house might be reflecting some of your medical conditions because the eighth house has got a natural quincunx to your first house. So a quincunx means that the two houses are 6 signs away from each other, just like the sixth house is a natural quincunx to your rising sign as well. So that's why we are going to be exploring the eighth house from a medical point of view. And on top of that, we're going to be looking at your moon sign as the primary indication of food. But let's get going with this full moon. Well, like I said, this is quite a passionate, slightly bit volatile full moon, actually. There's a lot of pressure going on in there. First of all, a full moon is happening when we have got the sun and the moon are in opposition to each other. Now, it's highly possible that something is going to be manifesting from the previous new moon, which of course took place in the sign of Capricorn. And we might be seeing a culmination of that. A full moon is always a highlight. Why? Because the full moon means that it's the fullest on the sky, so it spotlights something in our life. So if you have got any planets on 10 to 16 degree of the cardinal signs, which are Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, or Libra, then this full moon is going to be affecting you quite significantly. Now, what it really feels like, it's a little bit of an emotional pressure cooker, actually. The reason why, because this moon is being opposed by all that Capricornian energy there. So obviously, we might be trying to plant the seed when it comes to our emotional security, something to do with healing or even in our home environment. But this sun is being sandwiched between Venus and Mars, and Venus is the planet of desire and attraction, while Mars is the way we go after something, or Mars has got a tendency to deceive something as well. But also, it makes us super passionate, also. So, the Sun and Venus are actually separating from each other, but the Sun is applying to Mars. So, therefore, the Moon is separating from Venus and then applying to Mars as well. So, something that we have established here, what we value or desire, now we have to be able to fight for it, or we have to be acting upon it. But this is causing a emotional discomfort because the moon wants to stay at home, it wants to spend time with the family, it has got some emotional discomfort, maybe it's a confidence issue. While this Mars is an invitation that if we have got dreams, we're going to have to be able to act on them. So basically, what happens here is that both Venus and Mars are combusted. In traditional astrology, planets under the sunbeam or being combusted means that the planets are hidden or weakened. However, in psychological astrology, I would say that this is somehow something that is getting fused with the ego. So, therefore, Mars and Venus are not necessarily acting too objectively. They are a little bit subjective because they are blinded by the sun's glare. However, Mars doesn't mind being combusted. The reason why is because it can take the heat. Right? So, and often Mars gets even more passionate, more motivated, saying that, oh, you want to expose some heat on me? Come closer because I'm hot myself. So it becomes super passionate, especially in outbound Mars, to kind of like find a fight back. So this is a blinded, passionate point here right now in this lunation. And maybe we are unable to see our relationships clearly because the ego is too involved. So potentially we might not be able to see that our emotional foundation needs to be, or we have to be reflecting on, or we have to be healing that if we want to be able to move forward. So of course, Mars is out of bound. Venus just went inbound actually a day before. So, Mars is unfortunately, when it is out of bound, it is still a little bit more on the volatile side, and it could be passive aggressive as well, or it can be very protective. And the moon opposing that, it makes it very emotionally volatile. So Mars acts a little bit like a rogue agent. It doesn't want to follow the rules of the sun. But of course, Mars has got this huge drive to protect and defend something. So I'm trying to defend my position in the world. I'm trying to defend my status. I'm trying to defend things that I have achieved so far. But we've got this mother bear archetype here who only sees that things are on fire. So it's try to, it's kind of like a mama bear type who is trying to put out the fire because I have to be able to save my kids. But these kids are walking right into the fire just because we've got that Sun and Mars type of like invincible energy there. So something goes down, for example, at work, in the world, in the government, and so forth, that might feel like that is emotionally upsetting or emotionally kind of causes emotional waves in our life. Now, like I said, Venus just turned inbound. So kind of like Venus is coming to its senses. This Venus is trying to maintain the social norm. It is becoming a lot more kind, a lot more considerate about other people's needs and wishes as well, though. So Venus is kind of like stabilizing, trying to stabilize, trying to anchor this new moon here. But then the out of bound Mars is pulling us into this wild territory. So, of course, we have got the moon applying to Mars. So it might be showing that, yes, we are willing to take risk. We are willing to take emotional risks. So we've got this Cancer and Capricorn opposition here. One is a softie, Cancer is a softie, and then Capricorn is the hard exterior. So, it is very subjective moon, but then Capricorn dries things out. It makes us more objective. So while the moon wants to retreat and it wants to feel and it wants to nurture, for example, the Capricorn planets are saying that no, we've got duty to attend. We have to structure our lives. So it might make us emotionally more rigid. Um, and the moon might see these Capricornian planets as kind of like an enemy because they are threatening my emotional safety. It might be a boss, it might be the government, it might be reality, a reality which is crushing our potential foundations. The Capricorn stellium, it's the sun is somehow fused with both love and the war as well. So this is somehow showing up that we have got this emotional tug of war happening between among, like within us, basically. But this is a strategic power here. Mars is exalted in the sign of Cancer, so this is the unstoppable executive type of archetype, and then it has got a lot of ambition. It has got, but this is an out of bound Mars who refuses the authority to check up on us. We have got this huge drive to achieve, and I'm ready to go off the chart as well if I want to. This is kind of like the engine, where the engine is very cold, very efficient, very demanding. This is the system, basically, the big father archetype, who thinks that they can control us emotionally as well. Now, this moon is pretty lonely there, though. But moon is in its own home sign. So the moon feels everything deeply, but it feels like that this moon is feeling overwhelmed by the real world, by the hard facts. So I would say that this is kind of like the dynamic feels like that the heart is at war with kind of like the machine that we've got. So what is the emotional cost of our ambition? What is the emotional cost of being strategic? And because this is a full moon, and the full moon is about climax and having to release something, so it might be telling us that even though we have got something like a perfect system in our life, but the feeling of that is that I have to be able to break it. I have to be able to release that. Maybe it says that we have got this unstoppable executive who is able to achieve the goals, but it somehow shows that it is emotionally devastating. I have to be making a lot of emotional sacrifice to be able to get there. And do I want to pay the price of that? Now we've got a square to Cassandra and a square to Proserpina. So Proserpina is in the sign of Libra, while Cassandra is in the sign of Aries. Let me talk about them a little bit in case you haven't heard of them before, or you would like to check out where it is in your natal chart. But one of the ways, for example, you can check on solar fire. So let me show you. You go on pages, you choose asteroids, and then you just click on it. And then I usually use these asteroids the most. And then we are going to be looking for Cassandra and Proserpina. So you can see that Proserpina is 26. It's on 14-degree Libra. And then we are looking for Cassandra as well. And Cassandra is... No, I cannot see Cassandra. Why is that? Here you go, 114. Okay, so now we've got the numbers, and then you can see that Mars is out of bound, Mercury is still out of bound, and Venus is actually showing out of bound, but it's not out of bound. It's 23.27, so it just went inbound. Okay, so let's just have a look at what Cassandra is. Cassandra is the truth teller. But she got cursed, and basically, she got cursed that she's never going to be believed anymore. That's the archetype there. So, in Aries, she is trying to be very loud. She is trying to prove the point that, you know what, I am right. I'm telling you the truth. Why don't you believe me? There is a conflict here because what happens that in the sign of Cancer, we have this self-preservation mode happening. This lunation wants to keep the peace, it wants to protect the womb, it wants to protect the family. And Cassandra in Aries is screaming a warning or a truth, and that is somehow threatening our emotional safety. So, therefore, there is this tug of war between our urgent, raw truth and the changing contracts of our potential relationships. So, a full moon represents a moment when we cannot move forward anymore. You cannot go backwards either because it's a big spotlight. And Cassandra in Aries is screaming a warning about our ambitions. It is screaming that this path is somehow dangerous. Now, what happens with Proserpina? I mean, most of us heard of Proserpina before, I believe. Proserpina was the daughter of Ceres, and she got abducted by Pluto, and she became the queen of the underworld, basically. So she represents a transitioning from that innocent maiden to becoming the queen of the underworld. So she represents a loss of innocence, a separation, an abduction that is going to be leading to certain type of empowerment. So because it's in the sign of Libra, it somehow shows that all these are going to be playing out through a partner or a contractual agreement. So Proserpina squaring the new moon somehow indicates that we have got a certain type of sacrifice to make in our relationships. There is this relationship dynamic that might undergo a deep, perhaps involuntary transformation. So what we see is that the sun is being sandwiched between Venus and Mars, which is a relationship archetype there. So of course, Venus has got this desire for connections, and Mars is ready to go after it. But we are somehow being blocked by the necessity of a rite of passage. You cannot go back to the way things were in the relationship because the threshold has been crossed. You cannot, Proserpina basically got separated from her own mother, and the mother went after her and she tried to save her, but she didn't necessarily need saving because she fell in love with Hades, which the mom kind of like never had an idea about. I find it interesting that Ceres is there too, and that's the mom archetype there. So the mom and the daughter are walking pretty much hand in hand, but it's squaring that emotional safety element. So that's why we have got this Grand Cross. And what's very interesting about a Grand Cross, that there is no exit there. So we've got the 4 points, and then you cannot walk out of it. If it was just a T-square, then there is a point of walking out. Let's say if Proserpina wasn't here, that would be a point of being able to escape from this. But a Grand Cross is always something inescapable. So what does the Cancer say? I need to feel safe and I need to hold on to what I love. Capricorn says, you have a duty and reality to face. And then Aries says, oh, I see the truth. I see the danger. I must act on it right now. While Libra says, we have to change the terms of this agreement or engagement, even though it hurts. So, because these squares are happening exactly on 13, 14 degree, there is no kind of wiggle room here. So, therefore, this lunation feels super fated, super karmic. It's kind of like the moon is being besieged. That's how we call it in in traditional astrology. A besieged mean that a planet which is being sandwiched between a malefic and a benefic planet. So it can be two benefics, two malefic, or one benefic and one malefic as well. And when a planet is besieged, basically it also represents that something where there is no choice. If I choose the path of Mars, that's very volatile. If I choose the path of Venus, that is kind of like getting stuck in the past. So which one am I going to go towards? And obviously, Cassandra and Proserpina being in the sandwich as well, Cassandra is the ignored truth. And Proserpina represents somehow the changes in our relationship. So this is a tipping point, basically. That comfortable shell of the moon in the sign of Cancer is being cracked by the Aries, Libra, and Capricorn um, polarities. It is invitation to see the truth. It is an invitation to accept the transformation of our relationships with others, with ourselves as well, so that you can build a new reality. And that's the Capricorn element there. And most likely it will feel very dangerous, but exciting as well at the same time. Or potentially this is something that we would like to avoid, but it's a necessity. So it says we're going to have to be able to go towards it. It can feel like that if I don't move forward, you know, it can feel like that even if I'm moving forward, or going backwards, this is not a good choice. The ego is captured here. The ego is captured. I mean, we are represented often by the sun, which is a representation of our identity. So our identity is captured between our desire and our aggression. So it can also feel like that I'm trying to achieve something that I desire, but maybe potentially I don't know how to go towards it, or I do know how to go towards it, but the past is holding me back. Or it can be a choice whether I need to be aggressive or I need to be a nice one. Maybe I had to realize that the nice approach, because this is a separating conjunction, nice approach doesn't work. Nice approach always fails. So I need to be choosing a ruthless approach, and that would be the Mars. Just the moon feels very kind of like unsettled about being ruthless. Because it has got that nicety to it in the sign of Cancer. So that's why this is a brutal necessity type of lunation here, where the emotional body is flooded with light, revealing the harsh reality of a situation where, power dynamics or even broken trust. Proserpina represents broken trust as well, or ignored warnings have all converged. That out of bound Mars pretty much represents to me that, the system or the authority will win the external battle. And the moon says that this is making it feel super heavy. So because this is a full moon, and like I said, the full moon is always connected to release an emotional peak. So this is kind of like when we are going to be one moment crying, the next moment we want a hug, or the third moment we just want just smiling. With that Mars, we can throw big temper tantrums. With Venus, we can become super loving and caring. So which one am I gonna do? Am I gonna throw a tantrum out of bound Mars? Or am I just gonna be smiling at it, acting professionally, and so forth? So there is this exposure here because the sun highlights something. So it exposes, it highlights what I want and what I desire, what I want to get and what I actually kind of like need. And it can feel like that maybe my parents are deciding with Moon in Cancer what I can have and what I can want. And it might feel like that there are certain type of rules, for example, that I have to adhere to. And I don't want to do that anymore. Mars is saying that I don't want to be playing by the rule books. But Venus is like, yeah, we have to be nice about it, because I don't know, they are my parents. Remember that when it comes to oppositions, they often play out in a relational type of scenarios. And when we talk about relationship, this is not only about romantic connections, of course, but it could represent um, any relationships, business relationship, a relationship with a boss as well, a relationship with a friend of yours. It's going to be dependent highly on where it falls in your natal chart. It also says that you can get what you want though, but maybe we're gonna have to be very diligent about it. Or maybe you're gonna have to be dealing with that anger that you've got because of that out of mount Mars opposing the moon, which is really talk to us about that we are flooded with these anger feelings. And we're gonna have to be able to release this anger. Because this anger can be projected onto our loved ones. Venus and Mars conjunction is about love archetypes. The very good thing is that obviously we've got two benefic planets involved here as well, and that's Jupiter and Venus. And Jupiter is super strong here, it's exalted, but it's a little bit far away from all this type of energy. So, but it is still having an impact there. The danger could be that we want emotionally more than what is reality kind of like giving us. Potentially, we are ready to fight or to reclaim our inner security. Um, or maybe certain type of dynamics between me and others are going to get super highlighted here, and I'm going to have to make a decision what exactly I'm going to be doing about it. So maybe let's have a look at some scenarios that I can imagine. For example, I can imagine you or your partner, and then you are planning this career breakthrough. That's the Capricorn stellium there. And maybe the Mars out of bound kind of indicates that our ambition is kind of rogue a little bit, or it's all consuming. It kind of like takes all our energy away, or we are coming up with this cutthroat tactic, or maybe we have been working 80 hours a week. And maybe with this full moon, which is the climax, maybe the project launches, or maybe even a deal that is about to be closed down. But maybe this is going to be happening exactly at the same time when a family crisis erupts. Maybe a child who is going to get sick, or a parent who is going to need help, or the spouse who, kind of reaches a breaking point. So then Cassandra comes into the picture, which is kind of like warning us here. Maybe it says, I've warned you weeks ago, if you keep this pace, you will burn out. And the family won't wait for you. So, because the truth might have been ignored in the favor of achieving something in our life, all of a sudden this becomes unavoidable. And then what does Proserpina says? Basically, a contract that might be shifting here. And let's say a spouse or a partner is going to say that, you know what, I feel like I'm no longer a partner. I'm just your assistant. I'm your roommate, and I'm getting fed up with this. So therefore, a relationship that might undergo, that phase of changes. So the experience is kind of like, yes, I have won an award, but I'm kind of like crying in the bathroom because you realize that the cost of this victory was way too much. Or imagine that, we are in a relationship and the relationship is all about image or duties rather than that nurturing element of it. And maybe we look like a power couple on the outside, but we kind of locked in a battle for control and status inside. So therefore, the emotional, more sensitive partner could kind of blow up a little bit, like breaking the silence and letting you know about how unloved they are. Even though we've got potentially the security, for example, the financial security in our relationship. And, with the Mars out of bound, there is the dominant partner there who is reacting in a cold way, in a cruel way. They might not be yelling us, they might be just deciding actually not to talk, or they are just citing the rules, or they shut down completely. And Cassandra is going to reveal the truth here, and who says, you know what, I don't know, pretended to be happy, but actually I'm not happy. So it reveals the truth, it reveals the needs, it reveals the instinctual needs of the person. And I stop being kind of like polite. I'm not putting on this polite, nicey facade. And then Proserpina in Libra would represent a certain type of negotiations here. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is going to be ending, but we are entering the underworld phase here, and we're going to have to make changes. Or imagine scenarios where, a Cancer represents real estate, or even it can represent inheritance related stuff as well, especially property inheritance. So, I mean, Cancer Capricorn is the axis of real estate and lineage matters. So, I mean, imagine that you are forced to move, or you have got an eviction going on, or you're going to have to make a final decision on a family estate. And Cancer is very attached to something, but Capricorn is more about the system, the law. So, I mean, imagine that this Mars out of bound is just tearing down the walls, for example. The bank forecloses, or, they make a rule that no matter what you want to do with the property is just going to be demolished somehow. So, and it starts speeding things up. And then Cassandra in Aries realizes that, oh my days, I was fighting for something that I'm not going to be able to keep or have, because it gave warning signs before. But obviously, the intuition might have told us not to sign certain type of papers. So then Proserpina comes into the picture, who is trying to divide these things. Because what happened with Proserpina was that Mummy and Hades agreed that 6 months she's going to be in with Mummy, and 6 months she's going to stay with Hades. So she kind of got divided. So it's like a contractual agreement where a division has to happen. And we're going to have to choose which one I'm going to go with. What side am I going to go with? Cancer, or am I going to go with the Capricorn side of the story? And it looks like I'm trying to go with both of them at the same time. And it's kind of like the realization that I'm not that innocent anymore. Maybe I have done too much of Cancer, or I've done too much of Capricorn, and I'm gonna have to be able to balance them out. I mean, you might having to be dealing with a boss or a system or a partner acting out that Capricorn stellium, and that doesn't appeal to your feelings. Maybe a person in your life is operating on that Mars out of bound type of energy, who wants to win, who wants to be super efficient, but I feel hurt somehow. And maybe you need to be listening to Cassandra, who is screaming out so loudly that there are warning signs here, and then you can get hurt. But also, it can give you that urge to speak up, or to run, or to do something. You know, it depends on what area of life you are in, right now. And it feels like that we're going to have to accept Proserpina here, who wants to do this transitioning. It wants to feel, but also it wants to grow up a little bit as well. Proserpina is not about a puppy love anymore, it's about entering that grown-up phase. And often that's very painful. So I hope this lunation video makes sense. It has got a lot of um, kind of like maturing to do, and maybe that protective shell that we have created with that Cancerian part of our chart, it's gonna get cracked open. And something that cracks open doesn't always indicate that it's bad, but it can feel in that very moment that I wish, it didn't happen. I wish it hadn't happened. But then in the long run, this could play out super nicely as well, just because Mars is exalted and Jupiter is exalted as well. Now, like I said, I did make a video about this Capricorn stellium. So if you want further information on that, you might want to be revisiting those couple of videos. So thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you very soon. Take care. Bye bye.